Religion and accommodation. If somebody brings something forward and they say, this is part of my religious faith, and I need to honor this because this is a deeply felt conviction to me, they need to sit down and show evidence, first of all, it really is part of their religious faith. If they're somebody who has a deeply held religious faith and they attend their worship services once or twice every single year, how deeply is that and how much of a sincere aspect of it is it part of their life? If they attend weekly, even daily, or multiple times a day, then it becomes something really that is integral to part of their life. And really, that is really a major issue with them. You should be paying attention to exactly what they brought forward, because to them it means something very deeply. If they have that religious practice and it conflicts with employment, then you have to sit down there and address it in the aspect of, okay, based upon my religious faith, I must be off every single Friday. I cannot work Fridays. Well, if your place of business is open every single Friday, then you have a serious issue. Now, by the way, if your place is open Monday through Saturday, maybe Friday is their day off and they could work the Saturday, miss the Friday, work the Saturday. Sometimes it might work to your advantage to sit down and say, okay, well, that's the case. Let's do this and have a different alternative. Some thinking's involved, and you can sit down and make an accommodation like that if you choose to do so. But if it's a matter of if their religious faith that you hired this individual and their faith is in direct conflict with the goals of the organization, you do not have to compromise your organization to meet their religious belief. So, but the employee has to tell you. In the case over here, Goldman versus Weinberger, you had a yarmulke was the issue. In this case, Weinberger was a sincerely, deeply devout Jew, and he had a yarmulke, and he was fine outside because his cap, which is what they call a military hat, was on top of his head. When he went indoors, he took off his official military cap. He still had the yarmulke on his head, and even though that was part of his religious beliefs, the military code is pretty specific about uniforms, is that all caps come off. In this case, his religious faith was in direct conflict with the normality of the uniform military code. He lost the case because of the fact that his employer's overall goal of having everybody uniform, literally, they wear uniforms and they have to look uniform. That's part of the overall aspect of the military. And so the military sat there and won that case. Another one is Wilson versus U.S. West Communications. In Wilson's case, she had a fetus button. It was a graphic picture of an unborn infant that she would wear because of the fact she was a Roman Catholic and she felt strongly that abortion was wrong. But she wore that, and the overall context of the button turned off a lot of people at work, and they complained on a regular basis to the supervisor. The supervisor tried to intervene, tried to find an accommodation of putting something over the badge, whatever it took, but with that she insisted not and sued, and she lost that case as well. Here's two cases in the world of religious discrimination that when it came down to the overall workplace, at the end of the day, it is called a job and you need to conform to the job. And if you can't, you may have to do something different. So the reality is, make sure the basis of the conflict is truly a religious one. A good faith accommodation should be attempted to be made of a religious conflict. And understand the limit of the duty. If the employer tries to do everything and really cannot find a solution over here, you really have to sit down and look as to, okay, what have I done the case of this? Have I tried to accommodate this issue? If you have made a good faith effort to the point that if you sat in front of a jury, you could explain, we did the following things to try to accommodate this person, but at the end of the day, we had to sit down and decide, here we go, this is our business and our business model for providing services or products to our customer. This person couldn't fulfill it. We had to make a decision. So an accommodation depends on the situation. Options vary. There's the nature of the conflict. An employee could be relieved if they attempted to accommodate the employee, but if it can't be found, they need to sit down, maybe even dismiss the conflict or dismiss the employee. So under Title VII, the employer is not required to resolve the conflict in the way the employee wants. Sometimes the employee is so focused on, this is what I have to have, you must give it to me. No, you don't have to have it. You need to try to find a way to make a reasonable accommodation. By that, what would a reasonable person, somebody walking down the sidewalk, what would they say? Well, that was a reasonable accommodation in my mind. That is the threshold you have to really be involved. Sometimes it could say, fine, we'll put you, instead of putting you at the front desk, we're going to put you back over here into a different area, maybe a demotion. Sometimes accommodation can't be found. So if they made an attempt, it's going to be dependent upon the employer's workforce as well. If it's a small business and there's all 3 employees and one person consistently can't be there when they're supposed to be there, it could be a crisis for that employer. If it's a place with 5,000 employees, that's a different story because of the fact it could always be covering, and you might be able to even expand services and have somebody operating your phone on a Saturday because that Friday they couldn't make it. So that could be an opportunity as well. The employee checking with other employees, would you be willing to work with this accommodation? But if not, you still have to look at, okay, I need to treat people fairly and evenly. That's a big deal. How much will it cost to make the accommodation? What would be the burden overall? Okay, if the building is shut down all day Saturday and Sunday and we're saving $3,000 a day, it doesn't make sense to open it up for one employee. So pay attention to all the different aspects that could be out there. You have a legal right to sit down and do the most cost-effective aspect for you, but you also need to listen and, if you can, accommodate the employee. So what is the type that needs to be done? How much does it cost? Are other employees willing to be flexible for the accommodation? Could you transfer the employee? What's being done with other similarly suited employers? Somebody like a competitor, find out maybe what they did. If you have a union contract, then you probably can't make some of the accommodations, but maybe you can. Courts have found to define an undue hardship for the employer, it could be violate a seniority provision in the collective bargaining agreement. It could be force the other employees who don't wish to do so to trade places. Pay attention to all the different aspects of it. Sometimes you have a bona fide occupational qualification, a BFOQ. Okay, it depends where you're at, but if it's a matter of, well, I practice this faith over here and you're going to work for an institution of this faith, that could be grounds for termination. So pay attention to all the different aspects of it. At the end, religion and accommodation, the employer needs to listen to the concerns. Try to find something reasonable which won't disrupt the employer's operations. If it does, the employer does not have to be there. Okay, so that being said, the reasonable is what would be a reasonable person review of the request. If the reasonable person rule would say the employer has done their best to meet this religious accommodation, then that's probably all you really need to do. But tread cautiously on this, because at the core, a truly devout person for their religious faith, to them this is highly meaningful, where to somebody else it may not be so meaningful, but for them it's a big deal. And you might be able to have a fabulous employee if you make that one accommodation, provided it doesn't disrupt the workplace. Religion and accommodation, if you can, first of all, listen, and always sit down if it's possible, make an accommodation. But at the end, it is called employment. Take care.